All right, hello zoology people. I'm back. Always good to be back here lecturing for you all. Gonna finish up now, or try to finish up our discussion on the Osteichthyes. We get into some neat stuff here. So I hope you've been keeping up. Again, a lot of vocabulary, a lot of different names, different groups, interesting biology that we've covered up to this point. But we're still within the ray-finned fish, right? The Actinopterygians. So we're still going to kind of discuss that group of fish, right? But we're going to focus now on different reproductive strategies that they undergo. When I start to talk about this group in all aspects, right? One word jumps out, and that's the word diversity. So there's a diversity of species, right? 23,000 plus species in this group. Different life strategies, different ways of survival, and a lot of different variations in their reproductive biology as well. So there's more diversity in the reproductive biology in the ray-finned fish, Actinopterygians, than in any other group of fish, right? In any other vertebrate taxa. So fish, mammals, birds. So just again, diversity. It epitomizes this group here. So we're going to see that some fish lay eggs, right? And they nourish their young with yolk. So the vocabulary here. Let's see the trophy. We look at in the Oviparity, live birth. So nourishing babies directly from mom. So again, the whole spectrum. They're either laying eggs that are developing outside the body. They're laying eggs that are developing within the body, or having eggs that are developing inside the body, or they're producing live birth and babies are nourished directly through the body. So either they're feeding on yolk or some part of some mechanism from mom's body, basically. So big spectrum, although admittedly there's only about 3% of the live-bearing species, but there are still live-bearing species in this group, right? The viviparous forms. So just like we have this diversity of, or this range of birthing abilities, birthing process, the parental care also is going to range from absolutely nothing at all to a lot of extended parental care, watching the babies, helping the babies develop, that kind of stuff. And then the sex determination is quite unique as well. So some species, like in most other normal species, they're born male or female and they stay male or female their whole life. Other species are born one sex, and because of certain things that happen in their population, the population dynamics, they then change species, or not species, they change sex midway through their life. There are some forms that are hermaphroditic, so they're going to have both male and female components in the same body. And then some of them are parthenogenics, or parthenoforms, which are basically all females. Males are non-existent in those populations. So weird stuff, right? So they're very interesting aspects. So let's look at first the idea of being oviparous, oviparity. So we know that this means they're going to lay eggs, but there's a big distinction in terms of how this happens, right? So we're going to contrast freshwater species and saltwater species. And we're being kind of generalistic. There's a lot of differences beyond these simplifications. There's more complexity, but we're trying to keep it simple here. But we typically find that freshwater oviparous fish, so freshwater lakes and streams and ponds, they produce and care for a small number of eggs, and the yolk on these eggs is quite large, right? And we're going to call these demersal eggs, right? So the eggs are laid in an area where they can sort of be protected. They're attached to different things in the water, which makes parental care possible, right? And since the eggs are not necessarily floating away, it makes that sort of a stationary location where males can build nests, males can guard the eggs, so the males can guard the young when they're born. So this is a strategy of freshwater oviparous fish. Saltwater oviparous fish is quite different, right? They're going to lay large numbers of eggs, right? But it's this huge ocean, and you might be in the open ocean, so there's nowhere for the eggs to attach. So the eggs just drift. They become part of the plankton. They become part of the little drifting material in the oceans. So the eggs are very small for their survival, so they're not easy targets. They float, they're buoyant, and they're transparent, making them very difficult to see. So the eggs develop and hatch while drifting in the open ocean, the open sea. Obviously, there's going to be no parental care. So the babies are on their own from the very beginning. So it's a numbers game. If you're laying 10,000 eggs, maybe 3 or 4 might survive. Right? If you're having 3 or 4 eggs, in this situation, well, you put a lot of effort and care in those 3 or 4 eggs. So again, different strategy, and we know that they both function because we have these fish still around today. So whatever they're doing is working for their species. When we talk about parental care, right, some of these freshwater forms, they're really, I think they're very interesting. I'm a big fan of these little betta fish. So betta fish will make little bubble nests, right? So if you, I don't know if y'all have bettas. If not, go buy. They're not expensive. You buy them at Walmart, at PetSmart. They're neat little fish. They basically will make a foam bubble nest on the surface and kind of brood, incubate the eggs in that area, right? So we have sticklebacks, which are a famous species of fish that make these nests. They protect the eggs and the babies in the nests. And then some of the stranger forms are these mouth brooding species. So they don't typically harbor the eggs in the mouth, but when the babies are born, they can run into the mouth, swim into the mouth, and actually basically be protected there. Now that has an impact on how mom feeds. So if mom or dad doesn't get the signal that they're his or her babies, there may be a big accident there. So there's some interesting cognitive development, the evolution that allows these fish to kind of distinguish feeding response from non-feeding response. And a lot of times they'll stop eating while they're brooding these fish. Here's a close-up. So all those are little immature babies. And again, that is not a meal. That would be a big meal for this fish, but they don't consume these, right? So interesting. I'll post some corresponding videos that will kind of show you a little bit more of that behavior as well. The famous seahorse. I don't know if y'all are familiar with seahorses. I think most people are, but we know that in this situation, it is the male that has a brooding pouch, right? So the male can't lay the eggs. The female will lay the eggs, deposit them in the brooding pouch, and then the male is the one that takes sort of the responsibility of incubating the eggs. When the eggs hatch, the male is the one that's kind of that protective role, has the protective role of taking care of the babies here. So kind of flip-flops the traditional parental roles, right? So historically, the females are the ones that are more maternal, taking care of the babies. In this situation, it's the male, the seahorse male, that has that responsibility. So again, a lot of other examples, and again, I'm not doing these justice at all, but just giving you a little insight to that parental behavior, right? Now we get into the sex lives of these teleost fish, right? So we're going to look at some different vocabulary: Protandry, Protogyny, hermaphroditism, and parthenogenesis, right? So again, diverse stuff, diverse, different than what we're used to, right? So these are not the traditional just born male, die male, born female, die female. No, these are going to be some shifts and some changes here. So again, teleost sex lives, only 10%, around 10% are heteromorphic as far as sex chromosomes. So they're, again, different than what we're used to, right? Just the word I'm going to use, right? So in this situation, Protandry, so they're going to start life out as a male and then change to female. So this is a big shift, right? So think of all of the male characteristics that would then shift mid-cycle, midlife, and progress to female. So here we have a certain type of population dynamic, right? So we have a large dominant female that kind of controls the area, and the second largest in command would be that dominant male. A lot of the smaller individuals are sexually immature. They haven't decided yet what they're going to be necessarily. Right? If the dominant female dies, that largest male then shifts and becomes female to replace the missing female. So the largest sexually immature that's left behind, then matures to produce a male. And the best example I can give you for this sort of protandry life would be then the clownfish. So I don't know if you all watched Nemo, Finding Nemo. They don't kind of talk about this, but this would be the reproductive biology that clownfish would undergo. Right? So we would have that dominant female, largest. Then we would have a non-dominant, but the second largest individual here. That would be the male. And then we have this undifferentiated individual. So this is where it's kind of interesting. So this male actually can father babies, can produce sperm, can mate, can produce babies. And if this individual dies, if the dominant female dies, there's some stress in the population, different hormones, different cortisoids, the corticosteroids kind of get triggered, cortisol, different stress responses. And then that male then transforms into female. So testosterone shuts down, estrogen increases. And this is crazy because he could have been actual biological dad at one point, and then now can actually lay eggs and produce offspring. So can be an actual biological mother as well. So I don't know if anybody ever really analyzed Nemo, but knowing what you know now, in that movie, we know Nemo's mom died. So to be biologically accurate, what would have happened? Well, the whole movie, the dad was out looking for Nemo. That wouldn't happen in real life, right? So actually the dad would have then converted into the mom, right? So it would have been the mom out looking for Nemo, not the mom that died, but the dad who underwent a sex change to now be the dominant female, which is a mom. And it's just weird, right? Crazy stuff. But that's sort of the idea of this protandry. So starting life as male and then changing to female. So the same kind of idea. So the dominant male, female dies. The male changes to female. And these undifferentiated smaller ones then mature to form that secondary male. So interesting stuff here. Now, the reverse of protandry would be then protogyny, right? Which in this case, a female changes sex to become a male. So it's a little bit more dynamic. It's dependent on environmental stressors, on population size, population dynamics. But it just to understand it's the opposite process. And it's not as straightforward, it's not as simple. There's kind of gradients here, right? So it's kind of it's a sequential process that happens, but there's a change in color. There's a change in behavior. Like this is quite drastic. So we go from female here and we start to see the regression of ovaries, the development of testes, and there's a color change, a pattern change, a size change, a behavioral change, the production of new gametes. So it's just kind of, again, some crazy stuff. But these are the best examples. So this dominant male started out life as a female, right? Because of different aspects, different loss of the population. So again, these females, depending on which one is the most dominant, most aggressive, may become the next dominant male if this male is removed from the population. So if we go back to the idea of Jurassic Park, where that guy says, oh, life will find a way. So life finds a way. If there's no available female, no available male, these fish, the Protandry fish, Protogyny fish, will change sex of the individuals to ensure then that life can continue onwards. So again, kind of mind-blowing stuff. So I hope you're finding this interesting. So what we're gonna do now, I wanna kind of jump over to this next group, but I'm gonna pause this show here. I'll stop this one, convert it over, and then I'll continue with this sort of new branch. Instead of the ray fin fish, we're gonna look next at our lobe fin fish. Right? So let me stop it here and I'll continue very shortly with the other.